Hey, what's up again, guys? Welcome back to VanZ channel. Today I will share playable game content played on Winlator, using a device that has a Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 processor. This chipset is one of the best, and it supports many Mesa turnip drivers, where many games can be played very smoothly and playable, especially on the Winlator emulator. Among the following list of games, there are some that need to be set again to improve their performance. Okay guys, no more talking, let's begin. The first list is Monster Hunter Rise. This open-world game released in 2021 is playable for you to play in the range of 30 to 60 frames per second, depending on the spot where you are. Second, Need for Speed Payback. You don't need to worry about the performance of this game. Even without additional settings, it still gets frames per second that almost breaks through 60. Next, Resident Evil Village. With the latest update from Winlator, you can play this game smoothly at slightly higher resolution and stable performance. 4. NBA 2K13. This is one of the best NBA series and highly recommended for you to play on this emulator. The following gameplay uses the Slumdunk mod and has been running quite well. Next, NBA 2K 2021. NBA 2021 also still presents the same gameplay and feel, but with graphics that are much improved from the previous version. Next, Nioh Complete Edition. In the latest version of Winlator Bionic or version 10, this game runs very well and is playable for you to play on this Snapdragon 8 Gen 3. 7. Miraculous. Paris Under Siege. Rescue Paris from the clutches of Shadow Moth, controlling the ruthless stormy weather, who has harnessed ancient Egyptian powers to take over the city. Next, Sifu. This hand-to-hand combat game is guaranteed to be played very smoothly at around 60 frames per second, without any special settings in Winlator. Next, Visions of Mana. This is a playable action role-playing game that you should not miss. For better performance, use the settings suggestions below. 10. Grandblue Fantasy Versus. This fantasy game blends fighting game action and RPG-style adventure. Throw yourself into matches or enjoy powering up your characters. Next, Yakuza Kiwami 2. Yakuza Kiwami 2 is a pretty good action game with interesting combo gameplay. You can play this game with frames per second reaching 40. Next, Disorder. Disorder is a roguelike dungeon crawler. The fight to regain memories. Become a girl who has lost her memory and must uncover the truth. This game can run 50 frames per second. 13. Assassin's Creed Origins. By using the right settings and using the recommended settings below, you should be able to play this game playably above 45 frames per second. Next, The Witcher 3. In the following gameplay, using the latest turnip driver and able to get performance above 50 FPS, this game can also run using a slightly older turnip. Next, NieR Automata. Even the Poco F6, it is capable of playing this game with smooth performance, and the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 should be even better around 60. 16. Lies of P. This difficult action game can now be played on Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 using the latest turnip and DXVK shown below, and the performance reached 60 frames per second. Next, A Plague Requiem. This game is actually already included in the playable category if based on its FPS performance. So far, nothing disturbing has been found when playing. Next, Marvel's Spider-Man Remastered. You can now play this cool game on Winlator with a fairly smooth performance, reaching 30 frames per second with 720p resolution. 19. Devil May Cry 5. Just like the previous list, this game is also very smooth for you to play on this device, using Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 with a performance up to 60 frames per second. Next, Elden Ring. This Souls-like game can only be played smoothly currently using Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 with almost 30 frames per second indoors and below 25 frames per second outdoors. Next, Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. Follow the settings shown below, and you can add other settings in Winlator to further improve the performance of this game on your device. 22. Tekken 7. Tekken 7 is one of the most played games on Winlator, especially most players expect it to be playable. On this chipset now it is very smooth to play. Next, Assassin's Creed Syndicate. By using the latest turnip driver and DXVK 2.51, you can definitely play this game smoothly above 30 frames per second when using 720p resolution. Next, Assassin's Creed Unity. Just like the previous Assassin's game, this one is also quite popular with Winlator fans, and the performance can reach 30 frames per second. 25. The first Berserker Khazan. This game is already playable, and its FPS performance can also reach 40 FPS. But there are still sound bugs in this game, and hopefully the next Winlator update can be fixed. Next, Sleeping Dogs Definitive Edition. This game is able to run with better performance when played on Snapdragon 8 Gen 3. Next, LEGO Star Wars The Force Awakens. This is a very heavy game, but now with this processor and the recommended turnip, you can get performance up to 60. 28. GTA 5. It is not impossible for Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 to get this game performance at 60 frames per second. You can use the driver as suggested below. Next, Turbo Overkill. Turbo Overkill is a cool action game, released a few years ago. This game is smooth enough for you to play at 720p resolution, with a performance above 30 FPS. Next, the Callisto Protocol. This game sometimes drops to 20 frames per second under certain conditions, but most often found is playable. Use some of the recommended settings below. 31. Dying Light. Dying Light is one of the popular survival horror games that many people play. By using Snapdragon 8 Gen 3, this game is very playable to play right now. Next, Battlefield 4. I thought that this game would not run at 60 frames per second when using 720p resolution. It turns out that this chipset is able to run the game above 60. Next, Bramble the Mountain King. I clearly remember that this game was still not playable when running on Yuzu, but now on Winlator it runs very well. 24. Mad Max. The game is actually quite stable at over 25 frames per second when in open areas. However, it can usually reach 40 FPS performance if it is in a location with minimal combat. Next, Sekiro Shadow Die Twice. This is one of the hardest games made by From Software, and has a huge fan base. Now you can play this game with playable status. Next, Resident Evil 2 Remake. Almost high-end chipsets can play this game with quite stable performance. If you have better settings, please comment. 37. Resident Evil 7. Mid-range devices alone are capable of playing the game at almost above 30 frames per second, and the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 should be able to perform even better. Next, Atomic Heart. This action horror game is still in the playable category for you to play on this chipset. Its FPS performance does decrease when in an open area. Next, Far Cry 4. There is no doubt that this game is definitely playable for you to play with a performance that can reach 60 frames per second when indoors. 40. No Man's Sky. You can also play this game in a playable way, only there is still shuddering when you move the character and the rest is good. Next, Kingdom Come Deliverance. Kingdom Come Deliverance is a game that can make you addicted to playing it. Now you can play it with FPS performance reaching 30 on this chipset. Next, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. This is the most played Star Wars game series by gamers in the world. Now on Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 chipset, it can be played at up to 50 frames per second. 43. Halo 4. Halo 4's single-player campaign feels like two stories. It's a story about war and the introduction of a new species of enemies. Next, Resident Evil 3 Remake. Resident Evil 3 Remake is definitely a playable game for you to play on Snapdragon 8 Gen 3, even when you use 720p resolution. Next, The Evil Within 2. This second series is one of the best horror games that carries the theme of open world. This game certainly runs very smoothly on this chipset, reaching 50 frames per second. 46. Dark Souls 3. This is the best Dark Souls game series in terms of gameplay or graphics. Now you can play it very smoothly, reaching 30 frames per second. Next, Evil West. This game can actually be played with stable FPS above 30. If you are in a fairly crowded battle, sometimes it can drop below 30 FPS. If you better settings, please comment. Next, Fallout 4. Fallout 4 game is a playable game for you to play on high-end chipsets. This game can even be played perfectly using the Vortec driver. 49. World War Z. You can see for yourself with many battles taking place in one room. This game still runs very stable on this Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 chipset. Use the recommended resolution and settings below. Final list, Quantum Break. Quantum Break is a blockbuster game with time-amplified action and a suspenseful storyline brought to life in a way never done before. This game is playable with frames per second reaching almost 60. Okay, that's a list of 50 games that you can play playably on Snapdragon 8 Gen 3. Of course, there are still many games that are playable when played on this chipset, apart from the list. You can choose to play games that perform above 60 frames per second, or all of 30 frames per second. It should be noted that some games still require additional settings to be played properly, like Sekiro and Elden Ring. Okay guys, if you think this video useful, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe to this channel. Okay guys, bye.